Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this very special segment from our knowledge series, Electric Vehicles Market in India. We want to make this session as interactive as possible, so I request all of you to make sure you use the chat box on your screen below. So we all know that the push towards electric vehicles is inevitable, globally as well as in India. I would say particularly in India, because given the rising fuel prices, as well as the government's push towards EV, the future is going to be about the electric vehicles market. Let me invite you today for the very special guest for today's session, Mr. Prakash Bhutra. Mr. Bhutra is a computer science graduate with an MBA, and he is also the founder of Techno Electra, India's leading two-wheeler electric vehicles company from Pune. Launched in 2017, Prakash's startup already has a pan-India network of 75 dealers and boasts a product range of 3 electric scooters, Neo, Raptor, and Emerge, along with one of its kind delivery scooter called Sati, which was launched during the pandemic last year. Well, Prakash, thank you so much for joining us today. We would like to know, what led you to start your company into the electric vehicle segment? Why EV and why now?
Hi, Shruti, and good morning to everybody. Thank you, the Aryan team, for having me here. Glad to be a part of this session. So, as we start this, as we know, so the first question is why I thought of starting this. So, during some of my international visits, to different countries, I realized how electric two-wheelers were becoming a part of the mainstream auto industry. It seemed to be a brilliant idea if one could replace a redundant expenditure called fuel. The very thought of that made me realize that this industry has a vast potential, not just for India but also for international markets. I mean, and that's the reason I thought this is something that has to be explored and taken up as a business venture. That's the reason I'm here.
Okay, and did you have any background in the electric vehicles or automobile sector in particular?
Well, see, I'm not an automobile engineer, but I'm a computer science engineer. So I have a technological background. I mean, and as we know today, every sphere of life, whether it is, whether it is food or vehicles or whatever it may be, has a technological domain to it. I mean, and so it for automobiles as well. I mean, today's electric vehicles have a large large technological background to that, be it motors, chargers, batteries, or components talking to each other. And I think so that domain is what I carry, and that makes me, a reasonable, a good background to be able to be creating a sustaining, a venture, basically. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the EV market in India, the expectation versus reality. We know the government is making a push towards EV, given their commitment for the Paris Climate Agreement, reducing emissions and going net zero. But is India really ready for the electric vehicles market? Do we have the sufficient infrastructure and after-sales service and support? Because we do know that charging stations availability is a challenge at this moment.
I think first I'll start with why EVs and why now. I mean, as we all know, fuel costs have been spiraling high. I mean, there's a monthly expenditure and it's hurting. I mean, if we can have an alternative to that, I mean, nothing better than EV at the moment. The ground is clean and big, creating a big space for a big opportunity. As we stand today, it's happening and it's right here. I mean, 6-7 months, the question was, when would EV happen? And as we stand today, it's happening here right now. So, we are at the initial phase of a cusp of a EV revolution. I mean, the high fuel prices are just boosting the demand for EV two-wheelers. And we are talking about replacing a high percentage of EV two-wheelers. I mean, in India, we end up selling almost 20 million two-wheelers annually. Add to that the two-wheelers that would be from the previous years. So we are talking about replacing a large part of the industry, and that itself is a huge number. So that talks about huge business opportunity. That's number one. I mean, on your question about expectation versus reality, the expectation is that EV should be as robust and as low cost as the traditional vehicles. But let's understand one thing: the traditional vehicles have been here for almost half a century. So they have a huge amount of number of years where development has gone through to bring down the cost to where it stands today. As far as EV is concerned, I mean, in spite of being a sunrise industry, the cost parity is narrowing down very fast. So we are looking at a scenario where EV costs are coming down substantially, and hence that parity will come down. That would make it a case for EVs to really take a sizable amount of the auto industry in the country, not just the country, but also international markets.
Sure. I know you're not from the four-wheeler segment, but we definitely know that in India, the two-wheelers is what is driving the EV push. But what is your kind of outlook about the four-wheeler segment? Do you think four-wheeler segment would also very soon see the growth that the two-wheelers did in India?
Yeah, before that, I missed one of your questions about the EV charging point, which you had asked me. So, what I'd like to say is that the year back, the question was, I mean, what would come first, whether the charging infra or the vehicles? And I think as a country, we have had a paradigm shift in thought processes, not just from the government, but also from the private sector. Today, the government as well as the private sector are more than willing to build the infrastructure first, and the sales would happen. And that's the kind of mindset. I mean, just give you an example. We are seeing names like Tata Power, IOC, Reliance, etc., rushing in to create charging infrastructure. That's happening quite fast. And the charging infrastructure will stay in place here. As far as some of the after-sales support, which people have had questions about, that is also happening very fast. I mean, we are a highly entrepreneurial country, so there's a paradigm shift happening here in terms of component manufacturing as well. Government launching a lot of PLI schemes. So I think the latest one to be launched is the PLI schemes for batteries, which would eventually come into play in the next few months. So this all is creating a huge infrastructure, component manufacturing, which ensures that the cost comes down at parity with electric, with the regular traditional vehicles. So that is what is happening. You also had asked a question about how the after sales would be. So let me give you an example of us. We at Tech Electra providing a lot of after sales support, not just for our brand, but also for other two-wheelers. I mean, our point of sales or our dealership point itself have been equipped with knowledge and infrastructure to be able to cater to after sales. I mean, for across the spectrum, two-wheelers, whosoever brand it may be. So that is what it is. I think you had a next question on four-wheelers. Sorry, Shruti. Yeah, I mean, should I answer the four-wheeler part?
You mentioned, we'll come to that, but since you mentioned a couple of points, you mentioned that the government is pushing towards, and I think there are certain schemes under FAME where, as a consumer, I get subsidies when I buy an electric vehicle, and that essentially would have been passed from the manufacturers and to the consumer. So my question is that you mentioned that the prices are definitely not at par with the conventional vehicles when you compare the electric vehicles. There definitely is a challenge in terms of charging stations. There is a lot being done. Like I read news pretty much every week, 10 of the companies charging EV stations in different parts of the country. I've also read about hotels installing EV charging stations in their premises. So that is definitely happening, but it's still not at par with your regular fuel. So as a consumer, like purely from a consumer's point of view, if my prices are high, if I don't have sufficient infrastructure to charge my vehicle, and I may also face challenge in terms of after sales service. As a consumer, why would I go for an electric vehicle? Like one reason I can think out loud is because I'm somebody who's a sustainable, I'm a sustainable citizen of the world, and I would like to make greener choices. But other than that, what would be my reasons to go for EVs when I still have challenges when it's compared to the conventional vehicles?
Sure. So I think I'll break this question into, I'll divide this into two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. So basically, see, as far as two-wheelers is concerned, you're talking about a consumer driving a scooter. For the average consumer, the Indian consumer that drives is like say around 30-35 kilometers. And what we are providing a range of almost 80 to 100 kilometers. So, there is no issue of charging really here. One doesn't really need to have a great charging infrastructure for two-wheelers because this is a purely intra-city drive. the charging infrastructure is mainly needed for four-wheelers, because four-wheelers are the ones where you really go intercity. You go to different cities and, long kilometers, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 kilometers, etc. That's where you really need the charging infrastructure to play. I mean, on highways and across the places. So for two-wheelers, it's not really, that is not really a necessity, right? We have our vehicles come with detachable batteries. So, you can remove the battery, charge it anywhere. We try to make it as smooth as experience for a consumer, so that he has the least of hassles to while driving or even while charging. The charging costs are particularly very low, so that also takes care of it. I think another question of yours was a high upfront cost for owning a vehicle. Well, see, a couple of things that the government has already done, that they have already got an interest subvention for the interest costs on electric vehicles, which is not there for the traditional vehicles. That is one. Having said that, as I told you, that a large component industry is being developed across in the country. That itself would bring down the costs of the components. So, including battery prices. Those cells we are importing from the Korean countries or the China, but eventually cell prices are expected to come down. And as they come down, they bring down the parity, they bring in parity between the traditional vehicles. So that would take care of the initial costs for these, for the two-wheelers at least. Yeah. If your question was quite long, if I've missed anything, please let me know.
I think we've pretty much covered everything. My previous question is still unanswered though, about the two-wheelers and four-wheelers. So, we are seeing exponential growth in the two-wheeler segment. How and when do we see this kind of growth even in the four-wheeler segment?
I mean, see, my belief is that India is a relatively difficult market for four-wheelers. I mean, 78% of Indian car sales are at a price point of sub INR, 1 million. That's less than 10 lakh. An electric car with the same price tag cannot match the performance of an ICE car. ICE equivalent cars have much bigger batteries. They will have while Indian market is less likely to go for super high batteries like 100 kilowatt that is used in a Tesla. Let's understand one thing, that we are a price conscious consumer country, right? So we need to be into that segment, and we need to be in that segment. So to ensure that we have a sub 1 million car, we will really need to have the battery prices coming down substantially. A good electric car will provide a good driving experience, but it cannot match the price, the performance of ICE vehicle. I mean, so that is how the cars will mainly be restricted to the fleet operators till a certain point of time. I mean, fleet operators are on the other giving incentivized to go electric because they are cheaper for the average daily running cost, which is in excess of 120 kilometers on a daily basis. Fleets also benefit from the fact that they can set up their own captive charging infrastructure. They have a complete understanding of the charging pattern, usage of battery, etc., and can create a more economical fleet as compared to a retail user. So four-wheelers in India my feeling is that it will take time to come. Two-wheelers is something that will penetrate very, very fast.
Okay, so time, when you say time, you think it's another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
No, I think, see, it's all basically the heart of the system is the battery, and the battery prices are very important. We've seen the last 10 years battery prices coming down substantially, and with technological advancements, two things are happening. Battery economics are going up in terms of improvements are going up, and the prices are coming down. So it's a two-way, it's a double benefit that's happening. I think with the next 3-4 years, maybe by 2025, 26, we see the battery prices coming down substantially. They're hovering currently around $225 for a kilowatt, and something around $100-120 a kilowatt is something that makes it very affordable for the Indian segment. We are largely a cost-conscious country, so we need to be very clearly aware about that aspect.
Sure. I would like to switch gears and move a little bit towards the manufacturing side of things. So I think your electric vehicles, your scooters are produced in India, in Pune, right?
That's right, yes.
So which of the parts do you source from India? Which of the parts do you kind of manufacture in-house? And what parts do you have to import? And the reasons why you need to import them?
Yeah, so see, largely I think in terms of percentage of revenue or the cost of the vehicle, we are sourcing almost 75 to 80% of the cost from the country itself. What are they? Batteries, motors, some of the sheet metal parts, right? Controllers, etc. So you see a large amount of components are being done here. Now this has happened gradually over a period of time. It all started with batteries. The cells are still, of course, the battery manufacturers still procure the cells from outside the country because India still doesn't have any discovered lithium-ion reserves, cell reserves, right? So that's one aspect. So in terms of 75 to 80% of the parts are being sourced locally, and the plastic components is something that is being sourced from international waters right now. That's because a high amount of capex involved for the molding parts. I think once we have the numbers, we could easily start procuring manufacturing them in India as well.
And the batteries?
Batteries, as I said, yeah, they're sourced locally.
They're sourced locally. Okay.
That's right.
Because
yes.
A lot of manufacturers, have been importing the batteries. Do you think that was the case before and the shift has happened now recently?
Yeah, absolutely. See, initially when the whole EV revolution started, the batteries, of course, India didn't have any big battery manufacturers. So yes, they were being imported. I mean, primarily to start with, we imported lead acid batteries. That is what was being good. There's a paradigm shift that has happened from lead acid to lithium ion. And now I think largely there could be a few of them who are still importing, but to a large extent, this is being, we at least are procuring it on a domestic side, So it just helps the entire ecosystem to take care of any problems, any warranties, etc. Because you see, we're still dealing with a customer who's slightly unaware about the running of the vehicle. So, as that is gaining traction now, the education is gaining traction. And as we go ahead, the consumer is getting aware. And so the Indian connection is just helping us penetrate faster, give confidence faster, give a better service. And that helps cover the entire ecosystem. Yeah.
My next question to you is, as an electric vehicle manufacturer in India, what are the opportunities and challenges? And I'll tell you where this question is basically stemming from. So a lot of people from our audience are basically investors, right? So we want to understand, as an investor, when somebody wants to make, have a part of their portfolio in the EV segment, it's not just the electric vehicles company, right? You have auto ancillary companies also, which largely will be benefited from the EV growth. And I'm going to take up more questions on that later in the session. But from that perspective, what are the opportunities and challenges? And as an investor, which are the segments that, are something which I can immediately look upon as an investment opportunities, and which are the ones which could be like a few years down the line?
Sure. So I'll break this up into a few of them. I mean, these will form at different layers. I'll start from a bottom-up approach, sort of thing, what they say. So to start with, I mean, for any businessman, this can become a business model where you can one can take dealerships and actually make EVs as a business venture, right? I mean, as we know that things are, the EV segment is moving very fast. Demand is quite robust and gaining a lot of traction. So that's one of the aspects, how you have point of sales and go up. Moving up the value chain, you actually can go to some of the component manufacturers, investing them, whether listed or unlisted, some of them, and that's one who played out. Apart from the component manufacturers, you'll have the likes of OEMs like Tata Motors, Mahindra and Mahindra, etc., who are focusing on, who are diverting a lot of their attention on EVs. I mean, as we know that EVs is getting a lot of the multiples that EV, or I would not put it to just EVs, but clean technology is being gotten is far superior to what the traditional manufacturing units are getting. So that's another one. And I think the last segment that one can play out is by investing private companies, and which probably can give them a big booster, sort of more of a private equity investment is what I would say. And I think these are the segments or the different channels, layers that the investors can look at.
Since you mentioned about investing in private companies, so is Techno Electra looking for funding? Is there a way we could invest in your company, or do you have any plans for IPO anytime soon? Because IPO market is hot, and we know everybody wants to cash in on that IPO frenzy at the moment. So do you have any such plans anytime soon?
Well, no, IPOs really not too soon. It's too soon for IPOs. but definitely we have been approached by several strategic investors and funds, and we are trying to see who suits us best. I mean, we want to build up our financial war chest to be ready for the future. I mean, as we are seeing the space is hotting up, though I believe that it's a very clean slate because there's a lot to be covered up on the ground as far as EV is concerned. But this is one segment where things are moving at a very high speed. I mean, and it's not just from the corporate segment, but also from the government segment. It's hardly been, I mean, I've hardly ever seen any industry where the government has been so proactive, where they're making the right noises, giving subventions, giving subsidies, taking decisions very fast to to help the industry. And of course, it's bringing down their own fuel costs. So I mean, all in all, it's a win-win situation, and I see these things just going faster than what they have gone through in the last several years. Yeah. So yeah.
Sure. My next question is, that auto giants like Hero Electric, Bajaj, TVS Motor, they are all investing big time in the EVs. And then you have players like Ola and Ether, which are also gaining momentum. So I'm dividing this question, this section of the question into two parts. One, the competition is definitely intensifying in the two-wheeler segment, given the interest there. So how are you geared up to compete with these large players, which are already established in the market with a wide dealer base, likes of TVS and Bajaj and Hero? And also, how are you going to compete with the likes of Ola and Ether? So that is one part of my question. My second part is, again, given the audience and that we have a lot of investors here. So Ola and Ether, the kind of sales that they are making, and especially Ola had, sold millions of vehicles in a very short span of time, in a few hours, right, when it opened up its electric vehicles booking, right? So that is not something which was seen in the industry ever by any of the players. So how are the existing players geared up to compete with the likes of Ola and Ether and startups? Tesla is also entering the market. Obviously, their segment is very different. They are into luxury segment. But the other two-wheeler large giants from the world would probably also want to look into the Indian EV market. So how are these listed players, the big listed players, geared up? How are they going to compete from your expertise? And how are you positioned, and how are you looking up to compete with them? Prakash, we can't hear you.
I said that was like a really long one. I may have to re-ask you to repeat some of that part, but okay, I get the first 2 points. So, as far as the traditional people are concerned, traditional manufacturers are concerned, see, for them to justify any business case, I mean, they need high volumes. And I think the EV segment, for the last several years, we have been, dilly-dallying with low volumes. And now is when, for the last maybe 1 or 2 years, post the pandemic, I think things have really started shooting up. So, I mean, the traditional players have not, they have not really ventured out whole set into this segment. And for the reasons, because it doesn't justify a business case for them because the lower numbers, still here. But now as things are going, they are also warming up to the idea and taking necessary steps to, come on board of this industry, right? So that was some part of the question, answer to some part of the question. The other part was, how are some of these new players who have come, who made a lot of noises, the older traditional players versus them versus us? So it's a multi directional question. So I think, see, it's very important to have a network, right? I mean, for example, let's say you buy a vehicle tomorrow. I mean, the first question also comes to your mind: where are you going to go to servicing, or where are you going to go? You have some place where you can go to ask questions if there's a problem, etc. See, some of these newer players, they don't have a network as yet, right? It's a big challenge. That's a necessity. They probably are working on a different model, or online model, which, to my mind, the Indian consumer is not yet ready. I mean, we don't have the demographics, the consumer mindset to be ready to, latch onto that sort of model. Maybe it is okay till close, buying clothes online, ordering food online, but buying a vehicle online, I'm not very sure. You still want to feel it, still want to see it, because the costs are very high, right? And you still want to see it. So you still want to have places where you can see it. That's one. And of course, number two is where you can go to address it if there are issues, right? So I think that's a big gap. So now addressing the third dimension of the question, we at Techolectra over the last couple of years have developed a very robust network, right? And I think we are very fast to build that. We are running fast to build that. So that is something that we will build upon, and we see that will help us drive numbers, right? Our strategy has largely been we penetrate the rural segment. So right from day one, we have been trying. We thought that we will penetrate the rural segment first, and we've been rightly pointed out that the rural was the first one to embrace electric on a larger section as compared to the urban people, for various reasons, because people earlier had apprehensions about how will they take the batteries, or how will they charge the batteries on somebody staying on the 13th floor, 14th floor, etc. How do they take the batteries? The earlier batteries were not detachable; they were lead acid batteries, quite heavy. The new ones, as technology has gotten, we have made our batteries very light. So you can carry those batteries home and do it. So from that perspective, our rural strategy has played off very, very well. And it's easy to penetrate urban. Rural is slightly a difficult market, but rural has been quite awarding to us. They have been quite receptive, and so that addresses one part about how do we play. So of course we are building up our own war chest. We're building up our more number of point of sales, and that's the way to address it. And today is a very dynamic world. So while we are playing our cards well, we leave it for the times to come about how things shape up in terms of the competition.
So can I say that when it comes to the larger players, they are not a competition yet, because they have not taken this segment very seriously until now, because the volumes were not justified. So right now they are not that big of a competition. And from the angle of the new players like Ola, it's more of a noise. They are yet to figure, the consumer and they themselves are yet to figure out how their business model is going to span out. So you don't see them as much of a competition either for you or for the other larger players.
See, as far as the traditional players are concerned, yes, you are absolutely right. They have not yet launched on. They're still busy. As I said, they need volumes, and they have not come here. So as on today, yes, they are not a competition because they are on very small numbers. The entire industry, the numbers of the entire industry don't justify for them to make a business case. Eventually, as and when the numbers come, which is moving speedily, they will of course latch on. But as on today, we don't see them. We don't compete with them. And also, let me point out here that the larger the traditional players, the vehicle costs are close to around upwards of 1.2 lakhs, etc. Now, to my mind, this is expensive, because the Indian consumer, you're buying a two-wheeler, if your traditional vehicle costs around 80,000, 90,000, then one is not ready to pay a higher premium for something that is not, or that is being time tested. Okay, now it has proven, now the electric vehicles are proving themselves. So yes, but still, whether one would be ready to pay a premium, I think that's a question mark. So we at Techolectra have devised our price points close to around 75, 80,000 or in that range, so that we are at par with the traditional manufacturers, traditional vehicles, and that builds up a case for people to not to think twice, at least as far as the upfront cost is concerned, right? So this is addressing that part. The second question was with respect to the other two names that you took. So see, the latest one has to yet prove himself, right? So there's a lot of noise made around, yes, which is good, because that has created a lot of awareness. Today, probably people at Arihant and a larger section of your investor community know about the electric vehicles thanks to what the noise has been created. So it's very good. It's creating a lot of awareness about the electric segment, and will just help the industry at large. It's important that they prove themselves. Right now, I think the delivery is also yet to start. So it's too premature to talk about them. I think the next question comes, as I told you, deliveries. The second thing that comes to my mind is, what about after sales, right? Let's be realistic. As a consumer, if I'm going to sell you a scooter and I'm going to tell you that, look, I'm going to give you servicing online, right? Are you going to be able to buy that argument, right? You at the end of the day, you want somebody where you can go and just park your
Absolutely.
scooter and at the end of the day, take it back, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. When it comes to two-wheeler vehicle, for that matter, you don't want an online service for sure. It's not even for your laptop, for that matter. When Dell had online service, I was very apprehensive to buy a laptop from Dell. Now that they have point of service sales, I have a Dell laptop now. So yeah, I do understand, and I think we understand that point.
So,
There's a question from the audience which I wanted to take up. So the question is from Harsh. What are your thoughts on battery swapping model introduced by Bounce as their go-to strategy as an alternative to charging stations? Do you think a model like this has scope, considering it has not been tried and tested in India?
see, I'll break this question onto two segments. One is the OEM segment, and another. I mean, I don't know where exactly was Harsh trying to ask, but I'll address both of them. One was the OEM segment, and other is whether a battery swapping makes a viable business model. So I'll break this into two. So from an OEM perspective, for two-wheelers, as I said, do we really need battery swapping? Sometimes we get swayed away by a lot of noise and a lot of things, right? Because when I'm telling that, okay, look, my scooter can ride 80 to 100 kilometers on one charge, and an average consumer is riding 30-35 kilometers. So I'm saying that, look, our scooter can run almost 3 days without charging. If you need charging, our scooters get charged very fast. So right now we have a 3 to 4 hour charging, but we are developing a speed chargers where they will charge in a matter of an hour. So do we really need swapping for scooters? I'm saying. So I'm restricting my discussion, my point right now, to two-wheelers. So do we really need swappable battery for that? Probably not. This is required for the mobility segment or for the delivery segment, where you have a large fleet of operators where they're running almost 100 kilometers on a daily basis. And their vehicles probably sometimes are running 24/7 to make a business case. For them, swapping probably necessary. So it can be either a swapping or you give them additional batteries that takes care of it, right? So this is looking from the OEM perspective. Now looking at it from the business case of a swapping station. See, I'm not really sure, because from a business case, from a swapping station perspective, because you see the capex involved at the moment for a battery station, batteries, etc., is very high, and vis-a-vis that, the returns would be very minimal, not just from numbers, but also from the per cost that you'll get from swapping a battery. So I'm saying that, look, the cost that a swapping station can charge for swapping one battery would be, a consumer would be willing to pay a very small amount, maybe 100 rupees, 150 rupees or thereabouts, and not more than that. Having said that, we will not have that numbers, right? That you have huge numbers to justify, you should have huge volumes to justify these small costs. So that's one. Another apprehension would be the usage of batteries. You need to have same chargers to charge the same batteries. So let's say today I take a swappable battery of a XYZ company and I charge it, and it's supposed to get a charge with a similar charger. But let's say tomorrow my charger gets damaged and I use a different charger. Does it have the potential to damage the battery? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know that, right? So, I mean, this is another apprehension which probably can damage, or one needs to take care of when devising a swapping station model. So for two-wheelers, I don't really think so. Swapping, to my mind, would be a benefit to the delivery segment or the fleet owners, and largely the four-wheelers, not the two-wheelers. The two-wheelers would rather have their own set of batteries. You have, with respect to the fleet that you have, you keep a certain percentage of batteries, and I think that should take care of the concerns. Yeah.
Sure. There's another question. What is the electricity cost per kilometer of run, and what is extra battery cost?
What is the electricity cost per kilometer? So I would reframe this question, because electric cost per kilometer would be really be very less. But I'll reframe this question to probably what is the cost per kilometer running for an electric vehicle vis-a-vis the traditional vehicle. So that gives a more comparison, gives you a better understanding to the gentleman. Sure. So the cost of running a Teco Electra two-wheeler is as low as 20 paisa per kilometer, compared to a 2.7 rupee 2.7 rupees per kilometer for the traditional vehicles. That's a huge gap. I mean, 20 paisa and 2.7 rupees is a massive gap. I don't know if this can ever be filled or not, so that's the kind of cost that takes to running a electric two-wheeler.
In fact, that brings me to a question. If I'm a consumer, what is my benefit of buying a electric vehicle compared to a regular conventional vehicle? What are the benefits to me?
I mean, Shruti, the benefits far outweigh the costs otherwise. So to start with, as we are moving as a country, as I told you, we are getting to ecosystem where our costs of buying an electric vehicle are coming down for various reasons. Government subsidies, the new PLI schemes that will come up for the component manufacturers, right, which will eventually bring down the cost. So we are talking about costs coming down. So on one hand, your upfront costs are coming down. Then we move to your running cost. As I told you, I mean, 20 paisa per kilometer versus 2 rupees 70 per kilometer. That's a huge difference. So that's one. Next one is the maintenance cost. EVs, Tech Electra EVs will have a very low maintenance cost as compared to the traditional vehicles. So these are the large benefits that one can come across. I will also like to look at some of the apprehensions, right, which I've come across a certain point of time, right, which probably you may also have. How does charging happen and things like that? So look, our vehicles come with a very fast charging mode, so you can charge them very fast. As I told you, they come with the 80 to 100 kilometer range, so you can charge them over a span of 3 days, considering that your average running is around 35 40 kilometers. They come with a detachable battery, so you can remove the battery, you can take it to your office, warehouse, home, and charge it wherever you want. So it's as easy to do as that, right? Finally, I would like to point out to the viewers that these we need to take care of the climate and the nature. The constant floods in certain geographies, droughts. These are all our disrespect to the nature, and which is all coming back to us. So to have a better world for our children, we need to start respecting climate in each and every form. So I mean, we need to start moving to cleaner technologies and cleaner energy. Absolutely. To have a better future.
That is something I'm really passionate about. And I think that brings me to my next set of questions. So I'm somebody who's really passionate about sustainable living. And I think we all need to make efforts if we really need a habitable planet to live on in the coming years. So as an eco warrior, I'm sure there would be a lot of eco warriors in our audience. So as an eco warrior, I just wanted to address a few concerns regarding electric vehicles. I mean, there's always a debate going on. People, obviously the push towards EVs because it's considered greener, but then there are naysayers about the EV technology as well. Particularly the concern about lithium batteries used in EVs. They are not easy to recycle and they are often dumped or incinerated. I was actually reading an article, and it was a study from the European market that only 5% of the EV batteries are actually recycled. The rest actually ends up in the landfill. So wanted to understand what is the scenario in India. Do we have the recycling infrastructure for the EV vehicles batteries? And what are we going to do about the batteries? Once obviously the numbers are increasing and they're going to multiply going forward. The adoption is going at a faster pace than we can imagine of, at least in the two-wheeler segment. So what, as you as a company are going to do about the batteries, and how about the other industry players in the industry?
Sure. So, I mean, while we are too premature on this segment, but of course, this is the future where recycling will need to take care of. Why we are too premature about this? Because, I mean, we have hardly started with the EV revolution in India. The European and the Chinese have adopted this, a long back, and hence for them recycling is coming now. So it's too premature, but of course, this problem needs to be taken care of because we can see it will come one day. So largely my belief is that, the government has to make it very clear and stricter that the manufacturers or the consumers should do away with the batteries with recycling experts. There are recycling companies which will eventually recycle, so that is where it will take care of that there is no further pollution that is being created, or, the environment is not being made more hazardous. So that is something that will come into play. But as we move with a higher number, I'm sure this will come to play. At Tech Electra, we have tied up right from day one with recycling companies, where we can give our batteries back. So either we can give, a consumer can give, and where you get a nominal cost, the consumer can get a nominal cost back for giving the battery, and the battery recycler actually tries to make the best from the components possible depending on the situation of the battery in that case. So yes, we are taking care of this. I mean, as a responsible company, this is from day one that we are taking care of this. Yes.
So I can go to any of your 75 offices in 75 net areas and send my battery for recycling. They will take it up.
I mean,
and send it to the recycling facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can tell them to take the batteries. Yes.
Sure. My second question in terms of sustainability was that electric cars are not powered by clean energy as of yet, right? So then what makes them more sustainable than vehicles powered by fossil fuels? Because you may be charging your car by electricity, but that electricity itself is not produced sustainably. So why should I go for a car which is expensive and still not doing the thing that I'm buying it for?
See, for that, I think we need to change the electric grid in India, because I mean, today still a large part of India's electricity comes from, over 70-75% of electricity is coal generated electricity, of course, which is again a natural resource. So, we will need to change our electricity grid, mix of electricity grid. We will need to, I mean, as a country, and I think we are doing that. We are moving to a large section of, generating from the cleaner sources like wind energy, solar energy. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's an electricity bill pending in the parliament, which will usher in a revolution of electric reforms. So we will need to shift from coal-based generation to cleaner energy generation. That's when it makes up a strong case, for your question. And I think we are largely moving that. You see solar plants, power plants, all coming up very, very robustly, coming very fastly. So eventually we are becoming from a electric shortage country to electric surplus country. So I think we are largely moving that. That probably will build up the case for your question of using a car which is more which is deriving energy from a more cleaner technology. And I think that's one. As we move today, we probably don't have storage systems to store large amounts of electricity. So for example, electricity is generated through solar or any other, whether it's private or corporate, that is sold to the regular electric corporations that are run in the country. So if we have storage devices which can store large amounts of electricity, probably that will be, so electricity generated can be storage and eventually can be transmitted to charge the batteries as and when required. So this is something that will take care of electricity, clean energy charging the cars or other electric vehicles.
Sure. Now the next set of questions are going to come from purely as an investors from an investor side. So if there is going to be a company from India that can compete with Tesla, who do you think is going to be, obviously apart from Techno Electra? So which is the company which is set to compete with Tesla in India?
No, one, I don't consider where a company has to compete with Techno Electra. I mean, let's not have some, let's be very realistic. Having said that, Tesla is one of its kind. It's a different, and let's understand the difference between international markets and Indian markets, right? I mean, I again go back to my original thesis that we are a cost-conscious country. Do we need a Tesla sort of car in India? That's the first question. We need electric cars, of course, but Tesla, I mean, a lot of noise has been made about it. I mean, so I will say we need to have large electric cars which can cater to the mass consumer. That is something, because as a country, you don't want to cater to certain rich segment of the society. You want
Prakash, sorry to interrupt. I think the question was probably not framed rightly. So the reason why we brought up Tesla here was we're not trying to compete with Tesla per se, competing in their segment, but the idea is, the kind of buzz that Tesla created. Everybody loves Tesla. They desire to have or own a Tesla, not just because it's an expensive car, but it's a beautifully designed car. So, it's created that buzz. So not particularly in the luxury segment, but if there is a company who's going to be from India, which creates just as much buzz as Tesla has done, obviously in the more affordable space, because India is not a country where you see a lot of luxury cars selling in the country, right? So Now answer my question, keeping that in.
No, so probably that won't go hand in hand, because to have a to have a
Desirability, you think it has to
desirable
be
car, to have a car which sort of gives you solid features like whatever Tesla or somebody gives you, or even close to that, it all comes with a cost, right? So let's understand again how many of us are ready to pay the cost. So yeah, but I'll put the question that let's try to look at a common electric vehicle for the consumer. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I'm sure that's coming, but a large prohibition for this is why it would take some time is because, look, for the electric four-wheelers would take some time to really get onto the mainstream, because as I said, we larger section, 78% of the consumer four-wheeler in India is somebody who buys a car which is less than 1 million, right? So to be able to come to that sort of cost, we'll have to have the battery prices really come down substantially. Battery is one of the major costs for that. That would eventually come down maybe 4 years, 5 years down the line. And that's when we can have affordable car. Until then, I think the larger automobile giants are building ground, so that's great that, there's a lot of proactiveness happening in terms of Tata Motors and building up Tata Nexon, etc. And people are latching onto that and people are realizing that. So yes, maybe I think, from the car four-wheeler segment, as I said, Tata's is a group which has seen a paradigm shift in terms of leadership. And, that's probably one to watch out for. There's a lot of happening on the car segment out there. So probably they are the ones to watch out on the car segment until you have somebody new coming. Yeah.
Sure. Now, Prakash, I want you to step in the shoes of an investor and not the founder of Techno Electra. Since you are a industry insider and you understand the industry dynamics, if you were to invest in a company in the electric vehicle space, whether it's an automobile company or it's auto ancillary company, what companies would you bet on at this moment? I'm talking purely from a listed space because, our investors invest typically in the listed segment. Yeah.
Sure. So I think, first of all, it's a beautiful situation where something is going to happen. Largely people always take when things have happened, then the discovery happens. All right, things have happened, the industry has taken shape. Here is one industry where not just the corporate segment, but also the government is rushing in. Today, EV is the buzzword. I mean, let's accept that EV is the buzzword. So whether and thankfully, or whatever reasons, the high fuel prices have just fueled up the demand for electric vehicles. So yes, it's happening. It's happening very fast. The government, the private sector is coming very fast. From the listed space, though you guys are the better experts, I think that should be left to Abhishek to answer that. But whatever little bit knowledge I have, I'll try to share on that. So, as I said, Tata seemed to be a really good bet because, so this can be broken into a couple of parts, So the power generation, the OEMs, the component manufacturers from the listed space, right? I think this is the way to play it out. So from the OEM segment, Tata Power, of course, is the OEM, and Mahindra, of course, is the ones. They are the ones who are making good inroads as far as EV segment is concerned. I think component space from the listed players, I don't know many of them, but I can share a few of them. So one is somebody whom we source batteries from. The stock price who has doubled up from the last few months, but I hope I'm not. This is with all due respect to SEBI disclosures and all other things, right? I don't know where this is going to be aired on, but
no. So this is not a stock recommendation. Just a clarity. This is just an understanding of the companies which are doing things in the EV space.
Sure. So I'll put it.
Please don't consider them as stock recommendations. This is not the idea. It's just to understand because we need to understand who are the companies in this segment doing things. Sure.
So we deal with battery manufacturers called as Carbatrix, which is basically, I think, Carburetor Extrusion is a listed company. That's one with whom we source batteries from. So with your own due diligence, one can figure out things on that. There's another one called as Tube Investments of India. They're supplying certain parts. We're not dealing with them as yet, but yeah, they're supplying certain parts. We'll be exploring certain more with some more vendors. But these are the two names that just really come to my mind right now. But of course, I mean, if you require, I probably can do a little bit of more research and come to you on that. Yeah. The component industry has just started. So we need to wait it out because things are yet getting commercialized, for the components to be able to be commercially viable or to be able to come into commercial mainstream, it's happening. It's just happening.
A lot of international automobile companies are also getting their parts sourced from India at this moment. So not just the Indian companies, but
absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely that's going to be true, not just for the component manufacturers, but also for the OEMs. You see, I mean, we just spoke about domestic segment, but you see, there's a large. I mean, you need to be able to have the bandwidth, but you are also able to create cater to the international markets. I mean, that's also a market. I mean, oil prices are, sort of equal across the geographies, right? So that's another market that can cater for OEMs as well. Yes.
There is a question from the audience which is relevant to what we're just discussing. So is there any company for recycling the EV batteries from an investing perspective?
Not really. I mean, not really. See, no listed company right now. But I will also like to tell you that, the earlier India or the world, let us say, we started with lithium lead acid batteries. Lead acid batteries typically have a life of a year and a half, 18 months or so, thereabouts. So, they needed a faster disposable or a faster recycling mechanism. So that was there. But we have largely the country has moved from lead acid to lithium ion. Lithium ion is generally a battery which has a life of 5 years. Let me put it in perspective. Today, we are selling around, this year we sold around 3 lakh electric two-wheelers. And, so these batteries probably would come into recycle after 3 years, 4 years down the line. So you still have a lot of time because components or vehicles are going to be sold today, but for recycling, they will take time to come. So it's going to be, they will take some time to play out, right? So I think it's too early to get into that segment. You want to wait it out because there are hardly any volumes there right now.
But if you think from that perspective, purely from a sustainability perspective, if we think about it later, then probably by then we would have dumped a lot of batteries already, right? So the work has to start now on the ground.
I was talking about from an investment perspective. Your gentleman asked when to invest. So I said, yeah, okay.
Sure. Yeah, so we're on the same page. I think the work needs to be done now. Otherwise, it would be too late later on. The sustainable benefits that we are looking from the EV will probably be washed off if we don't have provisions for this.
There are a lot of people who are doing. One more thing, we have a very entrepreneurial mindset as a country. We are a buzzword today for startups, etc. So you see, this is automobile is a very large industry. So it's gaining a lot of traction. A lot of private houses are coming, sensing business opportunities at many places. Recycling also would be one of them where people would come. It's only the matter is only about time. It's just so they would come into play. So we're moving very fast towards, the convergence of entire ecosystem. Yeah.
Sure. We have a question from the audience. Prakash, you mentioned that EV adoption will happen at faster rate in two-wheeler than four-wheeler. So will there be a chance that hydrogen technology will disrupt EV in four-wheeler space? If yes, then what happens to the scenario? If no, then why hydrogen has not picked up since it is available since 1918? What are your thoughts on the hydrogen technology?
Yeah, see, basically hydrogen fuel, I think it's a highly flammable fuel. So I think transportation, has been the issue, and safety from the flammable point of view is an issue. So I think people are still toying with the idea. I think somewhere down south, there has been a test run on a bus where they're trying to see, to see how it can shape up and things like that. So largely, I think hydrogen fuel will be driven by the government sector first. So let's take it a transport segment or the buses before it boils down to the four-wheelers. Commercial viability and transportation is a challenge. I think we need to see how that works out. What are the solutions? But I am quite confident with the kind of technological environment that we're living in. It's just a matter of time before any of these come into mainstreams. When is a difficult question to answer. We need to leave some things for the times to answer. And I think, but I'm quite sure it would come into play sooner than later. Yeah.
We also actually, in fact, Mr. Nitin Gadkari was mentioning something about the biofuel, and the adoption of biofuel is going to happen very soon. So any thoughts on that?
Well, Shruti, biofuel is basically related to mixing of ethanol with your regular fuel. That is happening. Government, you see, this government is absolutely fantastic. They're doing a solid work. So they have mandated the fuel companies like PPCL, IOCL. It's mandatory for them. I think today the ratio is 8% for ethanol. They have to mix 8% of ethanol in the fuel. And I think by 2025 they're talking about mixing 22 or 25% of ethanol. So that's a blended fuel. So that's fantastic in terms of the blended fuel. Yeah. So we are trying to bring down our import costs. We are trying to create a better environment. The government is being very proactive, so that helps. Yeah.
Sure. There's another question from the audience from Manish. Does selling EV require a different kind of distribution network? How adequate will the existing supply chain network of ICE players be to roll out EVs?
See, I don't see why. I mean, though this answer would actually go against me in terms of my business, but nevertheless, I mean, maintaining all, to be very honest. Yeah, so I don't see why do you need a different set of channel. Yeah, why do you need a different channel for sales? The only difference here is that, look, EVs, the servicing part is very, very low. As we know that in EVs, servicing is very minimal. In the traditional vehicles, the petrol vehicles, you need a lot of servicing. And that's where a good amount of revenue comes from for the channel partners or for the dealers, etc. That is missing here. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why you need to have a different, different channel for doing it. I mean, yeah, the margins would be different, but I think that's a case of telling your dealer partners about explaining them on a larger section about how things are, and I think that should be comfortable. In any case, I think the margins are much higher in the EV segment as compared to the fuel segment. Yeah. So I don't see any reason why you should have a different segment. Yeah, channel segment.
I'm just taking up the last question for the day because we just reaching up the time. So what is the life cycle of an EV vehicle?
I mean, the life cycle is close to around 4 to 5 years. You don't have a problem. Your one question, which when unanswered, which is sort of related to this now, which I'll answer it now. What's the cost of battery? Somewhere you'd asked me in one of your previous questions. So, life cycle is close to around 4 to 5 years. And that's sort of a replacement cycle when you would like to replace your vehicles. There's a general replacement cycle. So that's answering your specific question about what's the replacement cycle. Coming to the battery cost. So I would like to inform the viewers that the battery costs today are close to, I mean, let's say to make it simple, I'll give it, what's the battery cost that we are having. It's close to around 25,000 rupees, let's say, today the battery cost, which eventually have come down from 35,000 a few years back to 25,000. And as we move ahead in the times, they're expected to come down to close to around 17 to 18,000. So to give you a perspective, you're talking about replacing or a cost of 17 to 18,000 5 years down the line. And as we move ahead, as battery improvements happen, you probably will not even need to replace the battery. So you will not have really any additional battery cost. Somebody in the audience that asked what would the battery cost. So that also would not be very relevant. So your running costs are going to be very low without any replacement costs.
Sure. Just one last question. Are you okay?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So will implementation of the full tech stack as an OS for EV fleets an interesting space to look into? Any companies that are doing this?
I'm sorry. You'll have to come again.
Will implementation of the full tech stack as an OS for EV fleets an interesting space to look into?
Full tax? What is that?
Full stack as an OS for EV fleets. Okay, Prakash, would you like, Yagnesh, Yagnesh, would you like to clarify a little bit on this if you're still here? Wait, let me unmute you.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Yagnesh. Hi.
Hi, Prakash. Yagnesh here. So, we are a seed stage fund interested into EV space. So, we are seeing a lot of startups entering into offering a full tech stack, so full technology stack, as in for the operating systems of EV fleets. So, is this an interesting space that you think has a lot of potential? And if you can think of some companies who are doing this right now?
I believe your question is the app side, right?
Yeah,
Application app side.
that's right.
Yagnesh, I think quite a few people have come on this side. It's though we are still in the early stages of the EV segment, but I see a lot of people come, and it's not. I mean, it's not something very. It's become very common. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a technological advantage of having one. But yeah, I mean, if you can have economies of scale in terms of developing the app and probably giving it to a larger section of fleet owners for the ones who are coming in, for them it's a ready to operate sort of thing. It definitely can, definitely, so it can become your redundant revenue model sort of pay per use sort of thing.
Sure.
Any companies in this space, I have not come across any companies which are on your lines of thoughts who have a large domain. There have been smaller players largely restricted to the two-wheelers, because in the four-wheelers we have very few companies on the fleet segment. Two-wheelers, there were a few of them. So there were a few of them who designed the app, and I think they said, but the numbers were very less and they were far more locally. So I don't know if it justified an investment or a business case.
Okay. Before we close this session, just a request from all of you. If there's any topic that you would like us to take in the knowledge series for the next time, please leave a message in the chat box. We'll keep the session on for another 5-10 minutes after we close it. So please do share this. So I would like to thank Prakash. Many thanks for joining us today, being patient with all the questions that we had to ask. And thank you for all the participants who were part of this event today. I think, if we need a habitable planet, we all need to make greener choices, not just in the vehicle space, but also in all aspects of our lifestyle and also our portfolio, because, if we support the right companies, they're going to invest for a better planet. So on that note, I end this session today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shruti. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the entire Aryan team at Aryan for having me. Thank you.